That's one thing that you have to know, that Big Pharma is doing everything they can, because what's happening is the word is out and people know. The number one concern for parents, not just in this country, but in most of the Western world, is the biggest concern is vaccinations. The biggest concern is autism. That's a gigantic concern for parents. And so my thought for all of you and for people working on this is, I know it seems at times, when you have big pharma, and then when you have big media, and then when you have big government working together with the medical establishment, it seems like there's no possible way to get the message out. But the message is getting out. People are hearing it. I do not have a vaccine-injured child. I became educated because of people in this room, the man sitting next to me, who put his career on the line, and other people whose main goal is to just make sure that other people's children don't get hurt. That's a pretty amazing thing. And so while sometimes it seems dark, and it seems, if you go online and you look at stuff, if you go on at the, but the message, like I say, it is getting out. And I do think we need to realize, though, that it's the little victories that you need to. It's the person that you could talk to. It's the person. It's the child that has a mitochondrial problem that can be fixed somewhat and help the behavior through diet. It's the families that whose lives can be improved, who have issues, and also it's continuing education and getting the word out. And it's an honor to be in this struggle with you. I got to say that, it reminds me of, you have to look at this in historical perspective. The historical perspective, if you look at from the abolition of slavery, it seemed like a dark, empty hole. It really did for those people back then fighting this thing, which is an obvious evil. But the powers that be at the time it just didn't make sense. And eventually it came around. And the same thing with civil rights. I mean, Dick Gregory, the great civil rights activist, told me that black people in America got the vote before women. So there are times where it is slow, but there is progress, and you have to know that there is progress happening. And like I said, as far as the movement for educating people about the potential harms for vaccines, you have to know how hard that Big Pharma is fighting against it, and it's fighting against it for a reason, because the word is out. It doesn't make sense. There seems to be this protection for this one particular group of drugs that no other group of drugs is afforded. And there are 50% of American kids have chronic illness, and we need to look at everyone, and everything needs to be on the table. And what I think we need to do, in my own personal opinion, from talking to people who I really respect, from the NVIC to Safe Minds and to the autism people I've met here, to Polly and Dr. Wakefield, I think it's easy to get down about it, but you got to know that there is progress. And the best way we can do that is to fight them and use their own tactics against them, Big Pharma's tactics. And they are vulnerable. They're vulnerable to information. I mean, once word gets out, it gets out. The fact that you cannot dismiss parents who have children with autism. These cannot be just stuffed under the rug anymore. The numbers are too big. They can try to take the numbers, manipulate the numbers, make new numbers, come up with more reasons for numbers, but the numbers are there. And they're not numbers, these are human beings. And these are people's children. And they cannot and will not be ignored. And so there are these little victories that keep happening, but we have to start using Big Pharma's weapons against them. Now, when you have a Bill Gates, when you have the Pediatrics Association, when you have They have access to money. Well, it's a very big opponent to go up against. So, but their tactics, we have to figure out a ways to group what resources that we have and combine and attack them in a way that they're vulnerable. And they are vulnerable. Big Pharma is vulnerable. They're not vulnerable to lawsuits. They're not, because they're protected under the 1986 Childhood Act, Vaccine Injury Act. But their stock is vulnerable. And they're also vulnerable by a little thing called parental rights and basic human rights. Parents need to make the decisions. These mandates are making them vulnerable. I really believe that. I think when you talk to people, and once you can just start to take down the veil a little bit, just a little bit, you can start to see how crazy this is, and how what we're really talking about when government combines with big business to start making new laws and making mandates, making legislation for what people cannot do or have to do. We're really talking about a different word, and that word is fascism. That's really what it is. When the government decides what you can do, what you cannot do, and you no longer have a choice, that is fascism. That's what we have here. But I do think we need to combine on how they are weak and how we can get through to people on the fence. Because there are people we're not going to get through to. I'm not going to get through to Bill Gates. I'm not. He's not one. He had his own issues with Microsoft. The government was really going on hard after him. For some reason, he decided to become a big vaccine supporter and spend billions of dollars in Africa. And the next thing you know, all the charges against him were dropped. I don't know. That seems like something interesting. But you're not going to read about that, really, in any mainstream magazines or mainstream media. But I just want you to know what we're really dealing with. There was a report about the freedom of the press, and they talked about different countries and where the United States fits in for freedom of the press. Out of 300 countries, 133rd. We're one above Haiti. That's a fact. So according to European press sources, and Finland and Norway, those are always number one. But yeah, we're 133rd. And you could talk about that, and I don't think there's a direct correlation to that and how we're 37th with infant mortality rates and dropping. So what has to happen? We have to find ways to unite the resources that we do have and the commonalities that we have, because the goals are the same. Our goals are the same. How can we improve the health of children in this country? How can we make sure this doesn't continue to happen? How can we end this epidemic of unwell children? How can we benefit? How are we going to make sure that this doesn't happen to the younger generation? How can we get these numbers to start dropping? How can we do this? Otherwise, what kind of society? If society cannot take care of its weakest members, then that is not a good society. This is a number that I'm going to give to you is kind of tough to say because it's about people who are well off and have money. But 85%, upwards of 80 to 85% of children in private schools in Orange County are unvaccinated. Those are the numbers. These are numbers. Those are real numbers. Their wealthy parents are knowing that they don't talk about it a lot, but they're saying we're not going to do this. And they realize that there's something to it. I think combined, we have a chance to make a difference. And I think that how are we going to move forward? And I think we have to find those commonalities and to press upon government that these are not numbers, these are human beings, and that you can't shove them under the rug. And we have to stand up, and we're going to have to do things like they did in the civil rights movement. It's the same thing. These are basic human rights that are not being addressed, and they have to be, and we will take it, you know. So.